Hello, Oops. Hello, everyone. I'm going to figure this out. Welcome to Freedom Over Fascism. We are live, and um, I let's get started. A couple people are coming in right now, and let's let a few more join. Okay. All right. Hi, friends. I'm Stephanie Wilson. Welcome to my Freedom Over Fascism fireside chat with Rachel at This Woman Votes. Some of you are joining us live, others on a video replay, and still others on an audio podcast. In fact, that's the bulk of the people who will be listening to this. So I want to welcome everyone wherever you are. Next week will mark the 3rd anniversary of this podcast, which is completely amazing and mind-blowing to me. We've gone from discussing the threat of civil war, authoritarian takeover, the inability of legacy media to grok the states of the moment, to talking about the information war, to living within the reality where fascism is real and on our streets and in our neighborhoods and everywhere we look. I hope you stick with us as we interrogate that reality, understand the forces behind it, examine the moment itself, and talk about what each of us can do to defend our freedom and imagine a new future. There's so much going on right now, I can't possibly list it all here. We've got a new tranche of Epstein files, which reveal ever more heinous details about what this international sex trafficking and money laundering ring was up to. Congressional leaders still can't seem to get their shit together. ICE is about to target the Haitian community in Springfield, Ohio, as well as already targeting communities in Minneapolis, Chicago, Portland, Oregon, Portland, Maine, Lewiston, Maine, Boston, and many more places. And private concentration camps are filling up with the private prisons, paid for by the number of people they're incarcerating. You all know I'm in Massachusetts, and here our Governor Maura Healey has taken some really important executive actions to make it harder for the feds to use state resources as they abduct people. And I'm hoping to dig deeper into this with either the folks following it closely, or if I can manage someone high in the state government, I'd like to talk to them. So DM me if you have any contacts. Before I get to our conversation, I want to thank the democracy networks I belong to. I'm a proud member of the Democracy Group and a banner and backbone here on Substack. So, as we've talked about on this podcast, there's an information war, a war on knowledge itself, with various groups living in differing realities. That's where Rachel comes in. She writes a lot about epistemic war, and she's going to talk to us about what that means and why it's so important to understanding this moment. Rachel, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and what epistemic war actually means?
Sure. I appreciate you having me on. My name is Rachel Marin. I write This Woman Votes, as well as I have a business blog called Trustable.blog. It is dry, boring stuff about AI and existential business threats. But my background and part of the reason that I started writing the blog was really about what I do at work, which is trust. We teach corporate entities how to build environments of thriving, basically enabling rabid capitalists to make more money by being less extractive and less exploitative. That's my business life.
But I'm on the other side trying to make people better leaders by humaning. So
perfect. So building environments of thriving, you would vibe with. Yeah, so that's sort of what we do. And one of these sort of extractions that came from that was this idea of, we started with trust. And when you start talking about trust, when you ask people how they trust, they first start telling you, almost without exception, why they're trustworthy. And so it started getting us thinking about, okay, we're building these models and we can prove it mathematically. And, we've built essentially a thermodynamic model of measuring trust in your work environment. And so the sort of the offshoot of that is a lot of stuff that isn't corporate related, but more societal, more population related. And then we started digging into, well, there's measurements here, there's metrics. I am inherently mathematical. I think about things in systems and structures and engineering and physics. And so we started thinking about epistemic warfare in particular because it's measurable. And while it's not a new technology, people have been using epistemics as a means of war for centuries. I mean, even going back to Galileo and heliocentrism and the attack of the church and that sort of thing, you were really looking at sort of the tension between ideology and authority, right? And so we started putting together this model called the SecSev model, which is saturation, enclosure, capture, and selective violence. Because when you go through the model, that model is applicable across centuries, certainly, but it's also really visible as soon as you see it. And one of the things that's different today is algorithms and our constant existence online. I mean, I'm 57 years old. I am chronically online. There is not a time when where I feel really disconnected. If I want to be disconnected, I have to go camping. There's a Great Lake near me that has no signal for miles. And I have to leave signal because there's so much demand on your attention. You've got a device in your hand, you're sitting in front of a screen, 97 things in your network are connected to everything. And so, the focus became for me this idea of epistemic warfare. And you start, once you build a model and you start looking at the model, you start seeing it right everywhere. You start seeing it framed up and you start seeing it applied. You start, oh, okay, that's what epistemic warfare looks like. And so within the model,
can I have you pause and just
Sure.
explain what epistemic and epistemology means?
Sure. So and I started doing a series called American Epistemics, and it isn't what I would call true philosophical epistemics, because there's some of my own interpretation there, but it was really meant to sort of Americanize and take this idea and contextualize it to what we're experiencing today. So when I think of just basic epistemics, I define this as how you think and know something, anything, when you think about sort of your existence. And I've broadened it a little bit in my my definition to say it's about being, meaning, right? So I have a triangle model that I use where it's just a way to sort of contextualize how you think about thinking and how you think about knowing something. So knowing, being, and meaning are all developed in your epistemic. And then the next level down from that is which is epistemic authority. So how do you determine, and this is kind of where trust comes in, how do you determine or assign authority to someone over information, right? So you're a doctorate, right? You've spent time, you have domain expertise in studying this domain, right? My expertise, I've been implementing AI since 2013, since before Sam Altman got the twinkle in his little beady eye. I've been doing it in practical application. I have a domain expertise in AI. So when I talk about AI, I'm talking about it from a practical application perspective. When I write, I have a tendency to like just exist in a rabbit hole for a really long time. And then what I try to do when I put information out is I try to cite my sources. I want to make sure that I'm looking at primary sources. This is what I read to inform this information.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully, and one of the things that I like about Substack is I feel like readers are maybe deeper thinkers. They're a little more willing to sort of follow along with what we're talking about. And so in the long form context, I think that really does help. So as I was going through this process, and the other part of why I started the American Epistemic series was really my mom or my son saying, you know, geez, mom, you talk about this shit like everybody knows what you're talking about.
Which sounds a lot like my son. And
right.
Yeah.
Come on, mom. Half the time I talk to you, I have to pull out a dictionary, and I'm like, but you know, I do believe that because of the information environment we live in, and because we get this constant barrage of what I call, you know, the emotional supply chain, right? Mm-hmm. This is the battle space, right? The battle space, I break it up into sort of 4 regions, let's say 4 battle spaces. There's home, mm-hmm. and home is where meaning gets created most of the time. Then there's institutional battle space where you have all of this contention of information. You have the government today actively eroding academic information. And so there's this idea within the epistemic war frame that the root of epistemic war is the delegitimizing knowing, right? They have attacked they've attacked what you know. Right. They're asking you to not believe your eyes when you see a video of someone gunned down in the streets. Like, it's 1984, for crying out loud.
Right. It's unbelievable how prescient Orwell was. But also, this has been a thing throughout history but just without the technology and
the technology and the amplification of it. One of the things that is in the SecSev model is sort of this, how to identify it's going on, right? One of the things that when I wrote the series on SecSev was I wanted to say, in these little bitty chunks, this is how you recognize it. And when you start hearing a pattern, stop, look it up. Right. I have an AI app that I use that basically does data aggregation. Right. AI is good for some things and absolute shit for a lot of things, but it does data aggregation. Right. So if I hear something going on, if I am autistic, so I clock pattern very quickly, but I did one a while back on Katie Porter. Right. I heard over the course of about 35 or 40 minutes of scrolling, I heard 4 separate people call her Snippy. And I was like, that's weird. My brain immediately went, this is epistemic warfare. Let's look this up. And I put it into my tool. Hey, people are calling Katie Porter Snippy. What's the background of it? How prevalent is it? What platforms is it being spread across? And sure enough, the tool returns everything. And I actually did a full post on it because it's a great example. The same thing with Renee Good. Mm-hmm. When the American government calls someone a domestic terrorist, that is a labeling frame. It is a control frame that says this person is an enemy of the state, right. Which means that everyone that is objecting to how she was treated is now a supporter of domestic terrorism. Right. and an enemy of the state. That is pure, unadulterated epistemic warfare. That is an attack on what you know as a person, what you see with your own eyes is being attacked.
So, I talk a lot about how the pro-democracy side frames things and talks about things, and I think it's a different sector of the epistemic war, because I think this regime in particular, or any authoritarian regime, very quickly starts the war, and they
immediately
over and over and over, and every single person in their in their, what do you call, oh my gosh, I'm pulling I can't think of
in their chain of command, in their regime. Yeah
everybody's repeating same words within moments of it happening.
Yeah.
So how do we learn to not repeat them in objecting to it, and reframe things as a way of fighting the epistemic war that's on our terms, and have us setting the agenda as opposed to always being on the back foot?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. One of the things that I talk about, and I did an epistemic war breakdown on domestic terrorism in Renee Good. I put it out a couple of weeks ago. And, so she was named a domestic terrorist almost immediately, right? It took 4 days between when she was essentially assigned that label and when PBS NewsHour came out with why this label was wrong. Right. So now we have a 4-day delay in that timing. And then it was another probably 3 days before Lawfare, which is another channel, came out and explained legally why this framing was absolutely incorrect, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody knew emotionally it was incorrect immediately. Right. Well, everybody on our side of the street. Right. But the problem with what we face today in our information environment is that you need to be able to react to the framing of domestic terrorist immediately. We don't have 4 days. 4 days, they own the goddamn frame. That's it.
Well, 2 hours they own the frame.
Right?
Right.
So one of the things that I've been talking about sort of behind the scenes and trying to put together is I've got a tool that I use just for myself. But, I want to put together a situation where a frame is identified nearly instantaneously. It's technology exists. We can do this, right? Mm-hmm. And then an alert goes out to every member of the media that signs up at the network, right? That says, this framing is happening. This is what's going on. This is why it's wrong.
Right.
Those 3 data points should enable every possible approach on the left to be able to say, this is what's going on, this is how it's being labeled, this is why it's wrong. And if everybody
and this is what you say,
and this is how to respond to it. Right. Yeah, that is, I think, desperately needed. Because the other thing that needs to be talked about that I think is really important is that nobody will acknowledge that an epistemic war is happening. This is straight up 5th gen warfare, not like, there's no tanks technically not tanks on the streets, right? This isn't Tiananmen Square or something of that nature, although kind of
close.
Actually, I mean, as a Portlandian, where they're gassing children at protests this weekend, it's not great.
The understatement of the year.
Yeah,
it's not great.
Yeah, but being able to have like us online, like a lot of us absolutely get it. The need for independent media, and the independent media online, especially on the left, and the ecosystem on the left, everybody gets it, but we don't have a consolidated message. We have no consolidated frames. We have no tools for that because we don't have the ability currently to just kind of get everybody on the same page.
Right. Well, we do have, though, is people who are telling us based on cognitive science what that frame ought to be and how you ought to respond. But there's no real blast.
There's no dissemination, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that is a big point that, you know, and the technology exists. Sending out a blast of an SMS message is the simplest thing you can do. And we all live with our phones in our hands, right?
Yeah,
so
the mothership and all of those scammy people have completely ruined it. I don't read anything that isn't vetted,
right? That's why there's got to be like, I'm signing up for this epistemic war report in this particular network because I trust that these people are going to provide good information.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big chunk of it. You know, the need for us to trust these people is important. The right doesn't have that need.
Right.
That doesn't.
Right.
It's built into how they fuse identity. I don't want to drag you into that rabbit hole, but
that's what this podcast is all about. It's that rabbit hole in every different conceivable way.
Right. Yeah. Like there's a reason that the right can take Zionists and Nazis and march them in the same parade, right? Because their identities are fused. And that's what enables that. The left doesn't fuse because there's no sanctity to any of it, right? We have a mission, we've got stuff to do, we all want slightly different things, but agree that children should be fed and nobody should be shot in the streets and people deserve roofs over their head and healthcare. Like that's what the basics of what most people that align on the left believe. But it's just a very different environment, and how we approach it and how we build trust into a system where we can get information out, have people trust that the good information has been provided and that good guidance has been provided and that they can immediately respond to this sort of epistemic framing needs to happen. That's, I think, job one at this point.
Well, part of the problem is that, you know, those of us in the community are in the grassroots. The people who have been elected to office, aside from 2 or 3, are silent. And that's a huge problem because, you know, there are lots of people out there. I talked to Anat Shenker-Osorio a couple of weeks ago. She's one of the people that's doing the research in cognitive science around what you say.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no, and maybe when we eventually get a presidential candidate, which I'm not even certain matters at this point, we can coalesce around one message, but there's nobody who serves that purpose on our side. So I think all of us are trying to become community and trying to do it separately but interactively and interchangeably.
Yeah.
But it's not that effective because we're all doing it on our own.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that when you look at sort of, and I'm definitely separating out the politics of what's going on. I am a firm believer that every single human in office should be primaried. They should all be primaried. I am in David Hoag's camp, like primary every last one of them. Like I said, I'm 57 years old. I think that at this point, I am too old to be running for office.
Oh, well, that's another thing. Okay, so we're Gen X.
Like that's its own thing, right? We're both Gen X, right? And so I look at I look at the average age of our representation and think, you know, I see it from a leadership perspective, right? I see it from my job as a leader in my organization is to ensure that I have multiple people that I've groomed to take my role.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I am only as promotable as an executive as the people beneath me.
Exactly.
And that's my job. And so if I'm looking at a elected organization that hasn't spent any time grooming their own replacements and actively preparing for their departure, then I'm looking at instability in an organization, right? And so I look at what we've got today and I think, you know, I don't look to any of these people as true leaders in this country. And the people who are effective are not effective in a way that I want to see our country led.
Right. I would have one exception to that, and that would be Mark Carney. But
oh, Mark Carney in Canada. I love him. Yeah.
Well, so I also had a conversation with Amanda Littman last week, and she's the head of
Yeah.
Run for Something, you know, 250
Yeah, I love her.
people in the pipeline. And in her book, she talked about boomers and near boomers as generations, and then millennials. And
Yep.
I like, when I read it, I was like, what the fuck? Like, there is a generation in between. Those are our parents.
but also, like, Ron DeSantis is a millennial.
Is he?
Yes, he fucking is, and he's disgusting.
Well, he's
Like,
disgusting, but what I'm saying is that there's
yeah,
so much,
like, we can't rely. We definitely left Gen X off the list in Amanda's book. I think I saw you have that conversation.
Yeah. I didn't love the way that she answered it, but the real answer is we're fucked, because the boomers never let go of power. And so
right. So we get left off, just like we got left off of parenting and all of the other shit we got left off of. You know, for me, I look at it as, I'm definitely too old for this shit. I don't have enough of a filter to run for office. And, you know, I used to, when I was younger and people would be like, oh my God, you should run for office, I used to always say, oh my God, I have too many skeletons in my family tree. There is no way. And then I look at the people that are here now and think, oh shit, I should have run for office.
Yeah, but it's the same on the right and the left.
It's definitely not the same. You know, you look at Al Franken, you know, being, frankly, I don't even remember what Al Franken did, but he apologized and resigned, right? He was a dickhead to somebody. I don't know. I'm not going to frame up what he did, but, you know, there is a level of sort of shamelessness and everything that's going on that's really hard to get your head around when you think about everything. But then I look at this younger generation. What's the kid from Florida? Frost. I think his name's Matthew.
Maxwell Frost.
Oh, Maxwell Frost. Maxwell Frost. I mean, I call him a kid because he's my kid's age. But that kid can talk in a way that conveys ideas. What I love about Mamdani is when his approach was, I'm not going to talk about what happened. What I want to talk about is what I want to build. Right. And we have to have people entering into politics with ideas about what they want to build, not what they want to tear down.
Right.
Everything that is coming out of today's regime is, I want to, I mean, just the mentality, the go fast and break shit mentality, the sheer destruction and epistemic destruction. I mean, Robert Kennedy Jr. It's enough to give me an aneurysm when I think about the damage that man is doing to generations of children, you know, and in particular, I'm really kind of sensitive to vaccines because I got chickenpox at 28 and it literally almost killed me.
I had chickenpox at 4, and it literally almost killed me too.
I was like, and my kids, so my older kids didn't get vaccinated. My younger kids got vaccinated, and there was like a gap. And in that gap, my older kids got chickenpox, and I called my mom, and I'm bitching because my kids are miserable and I'm grumpy, and my mom said, well, you better be careful. You never had chickenpox. And I was like, what? Like, my brother had chickenpox, and they're like, yeah, we sent you to your grandmother's when your brother got sick, and you've never had chickenpox. And 2 days later, I'm in the ER. I have 107 temperature. I ended up with varicella pneumonia, which is, I mean, I coded twice. I was in like ICU, like not exaggerating, brink of death multiple times. And I can't begin to tell you how miserable respiratory therapy is with a broken sternum. Forcing yourself to take big, deep breaths when you literally have broken bones is the worst experience of my life. But that erosion of epistemic authority, the erosion of who we believe, is 100% what Robert is doing. He is, and he's not even a goddamn doctor. Why is anybody believing this person? Like, why? He's been assigned authority. And I
priors. I mean, it's absolutely epistemic, right?
Yeah, it is again that explicit erosion of epistemic authority. In when the world is working properly, we assign epistemic authority in a way that makes sense. You've proven it. And when you fail to prove it, you lose reputation. There is an accountability to losing your authority, right? The guy, the doctor who wrote that shitty measles study that was sort of the beginning of measles causes autism and all that other stuff. That guy was
a little bit weird. I think that I think they're focused on two things. They're focused on autism and genitalia. And it's weird.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
yeah. As an autistic person, I find it very annoying because when he's talking about, putting people on farms and shit, I'm like, well, I mean, it doesn't sound bad. You're going to, am I getting 3 hots and a cot? That kind of farm? Or am I just going to like garden? Because that doesn't sound terrible. But like the reality is that it's no different from a eugenics perspective. It's no different from what has been repeated in history. This is not new behavior. None of this is new behavior. None of this is novel. There's no unique perspective from any of these people. It's just repeating the things that have always been done. The difference is we have complete legibility to everything that is happening. We can see the patterns that are coming in now. We can identify when someone is being when there's selective violence going on. When our president calls a reporter piggy, that's selective violence. Selective violence isn't always physical violence, although sometimes that's real. It's generally punishing, shaming, calling out, because what selective violence does is it teaches everybody around you to shut the fuck up.
Right.
That's what it does. And that's what it's meant to do.
Right. Well, and I think the other thing is an offshoot of what you're saying. It's the mechanisms, the media systems that allow us to know immediately.
Yeah.
From 18,000 different sources.
And some of them good sources and some of them absolute shit, but all given equal value.
Right, exactly. And
right.
Somebody asked about ground news. I actually think it's a great aggregator. But it's so hard to tell. My kid, you all know, senior in high school, texted yesterday to find out whether the Holocaust Museum was a reputable source. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking with my hands and I have all of the things. I didn't mean to.
No, that's funny. I saw it. I think understanding reputable sources, right? That all comes down. Yeah, that all comes down to the erosion of authority. How do we know the root of everything? How do you know something? And when you start attacking knowing, that you have eroded everything. You don't have to tell the lies. You don't have to tell the truth. You just create an environment where nobody knows what the hell is going on or who to believe. And in that environment, when you are questioning everyone, you can do any atrocity you want. You can do anything you want because there aren't enough people involved to stop you. And frankly, there are enough people engaged in this process to enable you, to enable them to do anything they want to do. And so we need a couple of things. We need a real safe news ecosystem, for sure. We need a proactive information ecosystem that enables dissemination, right? And it needs to be explicit. It needs to be trusted. It needs to be identified as truthful, right? That I got a note about a new social platform that's starting. I think it's called Us Trust or something like that. I haven't seen it in action. I got a thing that said, hey, sign up here to get on the waiting list for a preview. So I immediately signed up because I was like, yeah, definitely want to do that.
Yeah,
want to see what
platforms like this is how many people are going to use it, and are the right people going to use it? And
well,
still we have the same problems because
is it just one more echo chamber, right? Because that is what it comes down to. Everybody sort of starts self-selecting and funneling into factions. That is the straight up tribalism, right? But I think that Taiwan has a system that they use. They have a social system that is the government's social system. While there are a host of problems in Taiwan, specifically tied to what's going on with China, I've worked there quite a bit, spent quite a bit of time in Taipei, and they have a system that's actually a social system that's run out of, it's these guys in Seattle that wrote it. I think it's called Solus. And it is a trust-based social media platform that algorithmically focuses on community building and what your communities have in common. And it is basically a positivity generated instead of an engagement or outrage generated social system. And when you look at an environment, what we have today, which is completely driven by outrage and fueled, right, by everything, and it does not matter what side of the aisle you are on, it is an outrage machine, right? Outrage is the fuel for what we are in right now, as far as like a thermodynamic environment.
Right, but different
levels, different outrages.
Different
outrages,
right? But like on the right, they can respond to leadership telling them who they ought to hate more than on the left, where things are outrageous and everything's outrageous, but we haven't got a clue what to do about it. Yeah. I wish I had better answers, and I wish, there's also an enormous amount of money. There's a huge funding engine on the right because there is, an entire financial system that has a vested interest in the least amount of regulation, the least amount of taxes, and that sort of thing. And then the left is like, hey, you could solve hunger. Right. Or and
still be a billionaire.
Right. So okay. So Reid Hoffman is more or less on the left, starter of LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, yeah. I was listening to him on a podcast the other day from like mid-December.
Yeah, I haven't got to him, but in 24, his bestie, Dimitri Melhorn, was out there like trying to spread his money around in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
Right way, wrong, whatever. Melhorn is now trying to think as outside the box as he can and bring together all sorts of experts from all sorts of different things to try to think of strategies that aren't same old.
Yeah.
And he's coming back. So that I think that'll be really interesting. But
I think that'd be great. I think that the reality is this requires money. It requires time and energy. Like I probably spend as much time researching and writing on this woman's votes as I do doing my job. You know, I probably spend 40 to 50 hours a week reading, writing, thinking, scripting, like what can I do to put out into the world and to counteract what's going on the other side, right? And outside of a few existential moments thinking, who the fuck am I to do any of this?
That, I mean, why are 203 people listening to us right now? Like, what do I have to say that anybody
right
about? Like, but
right,
they do. Apparently, you all do. Keep.
And we appreciate it. Wait, if you make the hearts, are you going to get the explosion in the background?
No, the explode. Come on, the hearts should work. It's not the explosion.
Are you on a Mac?
Yes, I am. And it usually works because you.
It only works accidentally.
We use it all. Oh, there we go.
Oh, there it goes.
Yeah, we could do this and get something else.
There you go. I think that, you know, and I don't want to go down the whole man woman thing, but I think the reality is there are a whole host of people that never question their own authority. They never question their own epistemic authority. They are boldly confident. I think that, you know, I was listening to Gavin Newsom talk, and I think he was quoting Clinton when he said that people will vote strong and wrong every day of the goddamn week. And I think that's accurate. You know, Charlie Kirk had the platform he had because he was confident, regardless of his intellectual honesty, regardless of his position. He was confident standing on a stage and owning a stage in a confident, charismatic way. When you think about that is an assignment of epistemic authority, right? It's not well-founded in my opinion, right? But it's also what we're seeing today in AI, right? It's the exchange of epistemic authority with emotional resonance, right? Because AI, and I've said this quite a few times, but you know, and especially in relation to the Gen AI military deployment, if AI tells you the sky is blue, you better look out a window. Right? Because what AI is fantastic at doing, and because it is tuned to do this, is to produce epistemic or emotional resonance, rather, not epistemic authority. You cannot trust what comes out of AI in a way that doesn't require additional interrogation. I use AI regularly. It's my job. You know, I've got data aggregation tools. I actually have a 40-page instruction set that just argues the right's position, right? I have this, ethically guardrailed instruction set that I use when I want to refine my own argument.
Mhm.
I drop it into AI and
So
ask it to explain what the other position is.
that's really interesting. There's also an
Because you
AI,
have to have an adversary.
you do have to have an adversary, but you also have to be able to make your own case. So there is a company
Yep.
out of San Francisco called Change Agent, and they trained their AI on pro-democracy messaging,
Yep.
on cognitive science, on how candidates can write a stump speech, all the things that I've never used it,
Yeah.
but I know people who do, and it's it's using the power for good, we hope, until I
We
guess
hope. Yeah.
these things
Well,
become sentient. But
I mean,
they
humans
trained
are
it.
programmable,
That's true.
right? I mean, that's the entire point of epistemic warfare. Humans are programmable. You can hit certain pressure points. You can touch someone on their sensitive spot emotionally or intellectually. There are things that your eyes just glaze over on. And the reason that Facebook is as effective as it is because it knows every possible thing to know about you, who you like, what you respond to. In the early days of the internet, and like let's say 96, 97, I was working internet startups, right? AOL
PR.
was big, right? And AOL bought Time Warner. And at the time I was like, do you guys understand? Like, they know what I click on. They know who I'm related to. They know everything about the magazines I read now and the TV shows I might watch and the movies that I buy tickets for. They know all of this information about me. And AOL didn't have the vision to capitalize on any of that. Mark Zuckerberg did. Mark Zuckerberg has all of that information about 3.5 billion people globally. Mark Zuckerberg, like many of his ilk, are post-state sovereigns. They own infrastructure. Elon has satellites and a space program. We have completely outsourced all of that to private entities, which puts them above the state from an accountability perspective.
Right.
And by accountability, I mean fucking none. Right?
Like
there is
right.
nothing you can do to Peter Thiel. There is nothing from an accountability perspective. And I know France has been batting around ideas. They just raided Twitter's X's office yesterday or today. Everybody's talking about they want to do this, but I think that what's happening as we go forward is more and more countries are sort of recognizing that they've completely lost digital sovereignty. They are pulling all of that back. France just announced that they are going onto a new tech platform that isn't American based. Most of Europe.
Yeah.
Well, they've been on Zoom and Teams and all of that stuff. So now they're going to, I think the tool is called Visio. But, people are starting to recognize on the business side of things. I wrote a whole series on kind of Canada's digital vassalage to the United States because they don't have data sovereignty. Forget individual sovereignty. If you cannot control your data, you can't control anything. You can't control your information environment. So I think that more and more countries, we are going to see both a degradation of our position in the world as global leaders and our position in the world as innovators.
Well,
And
they're linked. I mean, you lose.
they're directly linked, mainly because the American government spent an enormous amount of money funding basic science, basic research that led to great innovations, which capitalists extracted, right? Early investment by the government led to the existence of the internet. And now, you know, Shitter exists, and Facebook and all of that. So there's been this massive capital extraction from early American government investment. And I think that's its own problem.
Yeah, well, that's
but I have a feeling we'll be able to start from scratch at some point. I'll just be dead by then.
Fair. Yeah, so the way I think about it, so America's standing in the world, we're not stable, so we're a bad risk, right? So
we're not a trustable partner.
We're not a trustable partner. So Canada and the middle powers are getting together on a need by need basis. And the brain drain because of the attack on the universities is
enormous.
Not already enormous. It's going to be almost complete. And so that just gives up more power to
sink into the dark ages. In the sort of, when I first started the Substack, sometime around April or May, I wrote this bit on, you know, we are entering into America's dark age. That sounds dark and existential, but I really do think it is, because of the erosion of authority and the erosion of meaning. And it isn't like this stuff is eroding naturally. They're shooting a fucking fire hose at it and eroding in parts and pieces everyone's ability to just believe something, you know? And then and you layer on AI, you layer on all of these other things, and it just gets you know, you want to either exfil to another country or kind of build a bunker. I leave for Portugal on the 15th. We're going on a real estate tour, so that's my plan C.
Wow.
Plan B is Canada.
Well, isn't it for everybody?
Well, I have the company I run is actually incorporated in Canada because the US is what I consider a post-law environment.
Okay, also fair. I'm going to ask the chat, have you not been able to see us at all? Has it just been the cover? Okay, somebody please answer me. Because then I'll put out the video if okay, they see us. Okay, that's good.
Okay.
Well, we could talk about Canada.
We could do 3 hours, and I will absolutely talk your ear off. But I you know, the stuff that I'm focused on this month is all of the intersections with white supremacy. It's Black History Month. I want to examine white supremacy from the perspective of we are being damaged. White people are being damaged by white supremacy. Mm-hmm. And if we don't at least acknowledge that, if we're not actively dissecting where we sit in this hierarchy, from a feminist perspective, from a white perspective, from a parental perspective, like all of this should be actively deconstructed. And so that's sort of a big focus for me this month. The 2 pieces I put out this week on sort of epistemic sovereignty are directly tied to reading Black feminist writers. So, and I have a reading list out as well. I try to put out a reading list if I'm doing like a big project. So if anybody's interested in joining, if you want to write a piece, if you want to read a book, if you want to communicate, bring it on in. No perfection required. I'm not even going to judge grammar.
Oh, come on, you'll judge grammar a little bit.
I mean, maybe a little bit, but not that much. I am pretty fixed on the Oxford comma.
As you should.
But
It's,
but
a non-negotiable.
That's a non-negotiable. But outside of that, yeah, I really want people to sort of think through where they sit. Think through what's been extracted. What have you lost as a white person to white supremacy?
Yes, and not all whites are the same.
And not all whites are the same.
Right.
But we've all suffered under some part of it. Like, when I was talking about the public pool situation, there are entire communities that don't have public pools because they didn't want to enable Black people to enjoy a public pool the way white people would.
Right.
Like, how,
yeah,
like public transit.
Mm-hmm.
The lack of public transit in so many communities can be directly tied to white supremacy. There are so many things that we don't have. We don't have universal health care because of white supremacy.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Active lobbying, literal white supremacists
mm-hmm.
took this away from us 100 years ago. And we live now in a world where you can be bankrupted because you got sick.
Right. On that cheery note, we are approaching the top of the hour.
Leave it to me to end it on a bummer.
It always happens. Because as we get deeper and deeper, you like get into this existential hole, and
right, and we're all just spiraling.
Yeah. One question, and then I want to give you the chance to tell people where to find you. Do you follow Mike Brock?
I do follow Mike Brock.
Okay.
Is he going to be on with you?
I'll try. But he and you, I mean, he talks about epistemic war all the time, and he's like, sometimes I have a hard time following him because he's very philosophy-ish. But I just wanted
to not be, even though, I mean, I have not been in a philosophy class in, let's call it 38 years. So my frame is sort of the study of it outside of school. And I've definitely Americanized a lot of the stuff that I've written. But yeah, I do follow Mike. He'd be a great addition.
Yeah, I've asked him before and he said yes, but we never put something on the calendar. And so I'm going to try to do that. I'm also, okay, why don't you promote yourself and I'll tell people what's coming up.
So I write at This Woman Votes. If you want to follow along this entire month, I am doing white supremacy through the lens of Black feminist thinkers. I put out January 1st, I put out a reading list. If you want to join in, if you want to, I've got some poetry that's coming out soon from another collaborator. I've got some videos if you want to do art. It is all welcome. I will publish everything that gets submitted with nearly no editing, with the exception of the Oxford commas. Just for clarity.
Yeah, of course. All right. Well, everyone should follow Rachel and subscribe to her. I just want to, okay. So, and I wanted to ask everybody who is watching us, who is listening, to support Rachel and to support Freedom Over Fascism, freedomoverfascism.us, with a paid subscription if you can afford it. And you can find all 110 previous episodes on Substack and the podcast player of your choice. So next week, tomorrow, I'm having Marlon Weems on. A lot of you know him. I want to talk about taxes, but I don't want to say that out loud because it sounds really boring. But I think a lot of us don't really understand how money works in government and society. So we're going to talk about that. And then next week, I have Dr. Eric Lulov coming on Wednesday. Tuesday is still being worked out. And I hope that you will all join us for those conversations. Thank you.
For really fun conversations.
I try. Thank you so much, Rachel, for coming on. And
thanks for having me.
I think we have more to come.
All right. Thanks.